what I found through a lot of these conversations is that the folks who are really against Islam and find that it's very violent and oppressive, that basically what's happening is that they agree with the terrorist organizations, that that's the true interpretation of Islam.
Right.
When the vast majority of Muslim scholars today, throughout history, and there's works that have been translated in English. If you look up A Refutation Against ISIS by Sheikh Muhammad Yaqubi, it's been written, and it was signed by hundreds of scholars.
Welcome to Creepalachia. It is going to be a fun episode of learning and understanding today. As y'all know, we've done a few one religion episode in the past, which was with a Methodist preacher. And today we have Adam and Ammon. Ammon told me Ammon like salmon.
Yep.
In the studio. And we're going to talk, what would you call this? American Islam or Muslim religion?
Yeah. So American Islam, and then the practitioner of Islam is a Muslim.
Gotcha. Okay.
So American Muslims, American Islam.
And I want to make sure I say this correctly, because I just say Islam. That's like the Appalachian way, but it has like a more of a bite to it.
Islam is totally fine.
Islam.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll find that if I'm pronouncing something differently, it's just that I've learned it in a certain context where I'm pronouncing it in the way that I learned it. But there's no issue at all just pronouncing it however it sounds.
Good deal. And y'all have traveled 3 hours to be here. Adam reached out to me. As the people following the show knows, we do religion episodes. And I thought, what a cool way to kind of build a bridge of understanding, we'll call it, with your religion. I think, in conservative Appalachia, a lot of people don't necessarily understand what the core beliefs are and what Muslim beliefs are in general, and we have a lot of fear. And I've been looking forward to y'all coming in so we can kind of help counter that. So let's go through backstory first. Adam, tell me where you're from.
So I grew up in Austin, Texas. Went to Montana about 10 years ago, and have kind of hopped around a little bit since then. Went to school some places, went and served as an imam back in Texas, but kind of always ended up back in Montana until really about the past year, where I've been friends with Ammon for a couple of years now, and we made the move down to Virginia.
Cool. Montana, are you a Yellowstone? Is that Yellowstone territory?
Yeah, part of it. In fact, a lot of Yellowstone was filmed not too far from where I lived. I was in Missoula, Montana.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sweet. Ammon, where do you come from, sir?
I'm from Afton, Virginia. That's in Nelson County. So it's just east of here. And that's in the kind of southern part of central Virginia, somewhat more towards closer to the west than not. I grew up there. I'm still there my whole life. Ended up moving to Charlottesville, which is the closest city. And that's a little bit more eastward. But that's where I was born and raised, in that area. Grew up in it's fairly rural. So I just grew up in that life out there, and honestly, I would say when we talk about our Islamic work and stuff like that, and most people, they hear it and they're like, oh, you probably, must have been going around doing this for a while. And it's like, well, everything that I've said has actually happened in Virginia.
Oh, nice.
And
yeah.
we do a good bit out there. I went up to Montana because I saw some images of these guys, their congregation up there.
Yeah.
And at that point, there's not a lot going on where I was. I wanted to see it. And so went up, my wife and I, and we visited, and then here we are.
How cool. Now, the section of Virginia you're in, is it in Appalachia or is it outside of Appalachia?
So the section I grew up in is in Appalachia.
Gotcha.
And so Charlottesville it's just outside of it, like the foothills, like the entrance. So you can look from there and you can see Appalachia, but it's kind of considered regionally right outside of it. Although culturally, it's the same people often coming in and out anyway.
Sure.
But the area I grew up in Afton, that was what people think of Appalachia proper. And I would say culturally that extends much farther than the actual region is. Like once you get down from the mountain, all the people down from the mountain, they still came from the mountain.
Cool. Well, sweet. All right. So, Adam, are you what is it called? Is it called a priest or a trainer? Like, what is it exactly?
Yeah. So the term that we would use is imam.
Okay.
But it's basically the same role as a pastor, you could say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. How long you been doing that?
About 7 to 8 years.
Gotcha. And how long have you been practicing, Ammon?
Let me think. That would have been probably about 6 years or so that I converted. I'm 26 now, 20, and that's how long I've been doing that.
So you was 20 years old?
I was 20 years old when I converted.
Yeah. 26 now.
And now I'm 26. So 6 years.
Gotcha. So did y'all have like kind of a Christian upbringing or anything like that? Or like what was it like when you were kids? Adam, we can go first with you.
Yeah. So I grew up in a K through 12 evangelical school in Texas. Right. So very much a Christian environment. We were going church on Sundays, youth group Wednesdays, memorized good portions of the Bible, whole kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I kind of started getting into other religions maybe when I was like 13 or 14.
Okay.
I think like a lot of folks, growing up in America today, when they're around a teenager, depending on their Christian community, they start to kind of question. And that was definitely what was going on with me. Even though I was kind of an outlier in my community, a lot of folks, Christianity was working for, they were comfortable, they were, they stuck with it and are still with it today.
Mm-hmm.
But, I was kind of going through a rough time of my life when I was a teenager. So I started looking for other answers. Initially, just kind of, okay, I'm an atheist. Nothing has any meaning. The world is chaotic and bad and whatever. And then that really, that takes a huge toll on a person, to have that perspective. It's not a comfortable perspective to live with.
Oh yeah, man. It's dark.
It's dark. It's very dark, and so I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of anxiety, and, after a couple of years of that, maybe when I was just around 16, 17, I was like, something's got to change. And I've got to kind of look more seriously at what's going on in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started exploring Buddhism, got very into that, was, meditating a lot and doing these kind of things. But, like I think a lot of people who get into those kind of more Eastern religions, especially at that age, they're still kind of the boss, like I'm still kind of making the rules of how that religion looks and how that practice looks and what I believe and what I don't believe and what I'm going to practice and what I'm not going to practice. And so I wasn't really getting like developed by that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you can't, if you have a sickness or you have a problem or you have a deficiency, right? You can't guide your own way out of that. You go to a doctor, you go to a trainer, you go to a teacher. If you're ignorant of something or you're deficient of something, you need somebody who knows that to show you the way.
Oh, I'm ignorant of a lot of things, but yeah, I understand what you're saying.
And so it's like I was trying to bring myself kind of out of that, but I was still setting the terms.
Right.
And then when I was around 18, I looked into Islam initially because we're growing up post 9/11 America, and I'd never heard anything good about Islam, to where my perspective at that time was that all religions have some truth in them, have some good and bad, except for probably Islam. I just never heard anything positive about it. And something stuck out in my mind. I was maybe like a junior in high school or something. And I was just in an art class at school. And people said that if they met a Muslim, they would kill a Muslim.
Goodness.
And I was like, that sounds extreme, and the people were like, well, no, because if they met us, they would want to kill us. And everyone was like, yeah, that seems fair enough. And that kind of stuck with me. And I kind of continued hearing things about Islam. And whenever I'd ask people, had you read the Quran? Have you looked into it really? The answer was always no. And so eventually I was like, okay, I'm going to buy a Quran and I'm going to look into it myself. And that's what I did. And long story short, I met another convert and things just kind of snowballed from there.
Sure. Well, that's a good backstory to lay out, because I think that's very relevant and real, even in today's society. I mean, we hear these certain things and we associate them. And I talked to y'all beforehand, like we're going to talk about it being associated with terrorism and, where that comes from. Now, me just guessing. So everything with religion for me is an interpretation on how I interpret certain things. And if it helps someone be a good person, I think it's absolutely wonderful. I think that when human error comes in and like kind of twists what the text says, and then to rationalize hate is where I start having a problem with it. And, and I think the person does this with any type of religion. I don't think it's any one religion. I think it's just people in general. But I do want to ask, so we'll start out with, so what does Islam teach about like salvation? Like how is it different from other Abrahamic religions in a way, if that makes sense?
Yes. I mean, I guess the short answer is that I can't speak in depth about Judaism, but it's quite similar to Christianity in the sense that, and I'm going to introduce some terms here. When I mention the name of the Prophet Muhammad, I say an Arabic blessing, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which just means peace and blessings be upon him.
Okay.
But it's a habit I have when I'm speaking about him. I'll try to translate it of saying peace and blessings be upon him. But if I say a long Arabic thing after I mention the name of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that's what I'm doing.
Okay. So is that like how, you have a lot of Christians that say amen a lot? It's kind of like,
yeah, like it's more like just kind of like adding an honorific. Maybe
it's like God Almighty. People say God, but saying God, it doesn't feel like, when like in a Baptist church or something like that, you say God, but there's often something that's after that because it doesn't feel like it's befitting. Like it doesn't feel like it's enough,
Sure.
So
yeah.
God blessed us. People say God Almighty blessed us. It's like that. So it's like, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's like the Prophet, peace be upon him. You've heard somebody say, "My grandfather, God rest his soul," or "God bless him," or something like that. So so think about it as God bless him. It's God bless this man. So
or like how people will say, Jesus Christ, Jesus our Lord and Savior.
Yeah.
Say, adding with the mention this kind of honorific. And so, yeah, that's something I just continually
just extra appreciation. Like you really, okay.
Yeah. It's a term of, it's the title of honor,
Right.
Like it's, to say it without that for us, that's to say it in a crude way. Like, growing up, I'm sure a lot of people, you couldn't have, let's say your grandfather, you couldn't have been like, hey, Tom, come over here, because it would have been,
vain,
or else,
right?
it would have been. So it's an etiquette.
Sure. Yeah. And I did a story on West by God, Virginia, and a lot of people think it's blasphemous, but it's actually quite the opposite. It's appreciation of, West Virginia being formed. So it's kind of like, that's how I see it, as just appreciation. And, I think you could say, pop can and it'd be blasphemy if your intent's there. You know what I mean? Like,
Right, sure.
the intent's the thing for me. But I do know, like, I also try to respect, like, people's beliefs and things like that. But so Muhammad is he kind of like God or Jesus?
Yeah.
Or
so no, not at all.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's no human figure who would be considered divine at all. And we'll get into the salvation question. That's still in my mind, but I guess like something to kind of lay the framework of how Islam understands the difference between God and the creation is that God is a completely unique type of being. He's not like a man in any way. He doesn't, it says in the Quran, he's not like anything. So even if we look at a creation and we say that creation didn't sin, or was the most knowledgeable creation, or was the most powerful creation, or something like this, we gave it all of these honorifics, all of these titles, all of these abilities, it would never run into God, right? Because God is a totally different class of being.
Okay.
And all of the other beings, everything that's created, whether it's a prophet or an angel or anything, it's completely a servant of God, and any ability it has was given by God and could be taken away.
Okay.
Yeah. So we mention the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, with immense respect and reverence. And we hold him as a perfect guide for us. But that never equates to worship or considering him God in any way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps. So, and the Quran is the Bible, basically, but for Muslims, is that correct?
Yes and no, in the sense that it occupies the same space as the Bible in a way, because it's the primary text of divine revelation, right? It's God's word, God's message to people. But if you are reading the Quran and you're reading the Bible, the way that they read is quite different. In that the Quran is kind of reading like a conversation between you and God, like as if God is addressing you, warning you, giving you glad tidings, reminding you of things that has happened in the past. But it's not like a story or lineages or things like this.
So there's not like parables and different stories like that, or
there are parables, but it really, you'd have to take the two and read them to see how different it is, because the Bible at some point, in many points in the Bible, it's a long linear narrative. Right. And then maybe Jesus, peace be upon him, will tell a parable, right? But then it kind of goes back to the main story and then goes to a different story, where the topic of the Quran is you, really, right? It's you and God, like how those two are interacting right now, and then reminders of things that have happened in the past. And the parables might be woven in there. But it's not this kind of, beginning in Genesis, ending at Revelation.
Okay. Gotcha. So like where you have the red text in the Bible of like where God is speaking, essentially the Quran is the entire book is God speaking.
And it's very clear when you're reading it too, because there are times in the Quran repeatedly where, you're being directly mentioned, spoken to. And do you recall? And recall this, and it's not that it's a memory of people saying that in a story. It's that you are reading it and you're being asked to recall it.
Okay.
You know, it's directed at the reader.
Okay.
And so, you know, you have like the red text Bible. People talk about that, you know, whatnot. And, or, you know, I'm a red letter Christian or whatnot. So for Islam, it's the entire thing is direct revelation.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was beautifully put, actually, to say that if you were to look at the two, like, because God is the sole speaker in the Quran. And there's another primary text, like set of primary texts called the hadith, which a hadith is basically like a conversation or narration that would read more like parts of the Bible, right? Like one of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said this, right? Or he saw this, or this was happening in the mosque. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, responded like this, right? It's more, it's in a more kind of story like, you know, it's these pieces of humans interacting historically and what was occurring in those instances.
Okay. Man, we could have a 20-hour episode. I'm going to try not to get too like because I have so much I want to cover.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to. You can tell once I get rolling.
No, this is great.
I'm hard to stop. So.
That's part of why they have me in here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, every note brings up 10 other questions to me, and I'm like, well, no, I'm gonna try and stick to the core stuff that I know.
In fact, so with that, let me try to honor your initial question, which is how does salvation differ?
Perfect. It only took us 15 minutes.
I'm keeping them in my mind. So, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, he said that no one will enter paradise by their works alone, only through the mercy of God. Right, and I think that a lot of Christians can understand the basics that we're saved by faith, not by works.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's the essence of Islam as well, that you're saved by belief in the oneness of God, by accepting all of the prophets and all of the messengers who God has sent, which we believe the final one is the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. That's primarily where salvation comes from. But faith and works are deeply interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there are rewards for good actions and punishments for bad actions, unless God forgives you.
Mm-hmm.
And so actions are taken very seriously. And a Muslim's life revolves around honoring different commandments, you know, honoring the commandment of prayer. Our year revolves around honoring the commandment of fasting, and these types of things. But it's understood that acting upon that is like it's a blessing and a gratitude of faith that's a sign of its sincerity.
Mm-hmm.
But being like leaving those things, if you had real faith, why would you leave them, right? There's a connection between the strength of somebody's faith and the actions that they're doing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah. I think it's I think it's relatable with Christianity. I think the only difference, and correct me if I'm wrong, would be, you know, to be technically saved, you believe that Jesus died on the cross.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but other than that, it sounds like the same thing. But yeah.
Well, our salvation concept too, it's a little bit more nuanced on the rest of the world, you know, because I've met Christians who they've said like, oh, sorry, you never got the message, you know, you were on a desert island and nobody ever told you about the Jesus died on the cross at this time. Well, that's too bad, you know. And for us, that's not the case. You know, the amount of a person's accountability is directly linked to a person's understanding and to their knowledge in that way.
Sure.
So for instance, like if a person is person who knows very little and a person who knows a great deal in detail, there's a different weight to that.
Okay, that makes sense. Oh,
Am I correct? Am I correct in that assertion?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that is an ongoing question of like, what if someone was born somewhere where they never knew anything ever and then lived their life and died and never knew about Jesus? So I'm glad you you brought that up. But all right, so let's keep breaking down the Quran. So who technically did God write the Quran? Is that basically?
So the Quran, like the word Quran, it means a recitation. And how it came is that it was a series of revelations given to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, who recited them, and these recitations were memorized and were written down by the people around him.
Okay.
But the words themselves are the words of God. They're not the words of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. In fact, it's often that those words are addressing the Prophet, or peace and blessings be upon him, or commanding him to say something, because they're not his words. And if you look at like how he speaks as reported in the hadith, like I mentioned, right, in these narrations, it's quite different than the speech of the Quran. Yeah.
So does the Quran mention, like, how the Bible has, all right, well, the world was made in 7 days and, had all this different backstory? Does it kind of explain chronologically things like that too? Or
yes, of that it mentions like God creating the world in 6 days, and ascending the throne, and so it'll mention these things, but it's like it's very interesting of that. Maybe there will be like one line of that in a chapter, right, and then it'll kind of tie into your actions now, and then it will tie into a description of paradise, and then it will tie into a warning of the hellfire, and then it will bring a description of the hellfire, and then it will bring you back to something about God's majesty. Like it's like it's taking you through the best way I could describe it is that reading the Quran itself is like a spiritual experience, right? Because it's bringing you through these different kind of realizations, like something fundamental about, like something that God did that was important, right? Or something that happened in the past that was important. What that means for you, what you need to do, what this life is, and then what the next life is, and how your actions are affecting the next life.
Exactly. It's that the purpose of the Quran isn't to give you a succinct lesson on history and what happened. The Quran and the purpose of the Quran is much more concerned with anybody, anytime, any place, where they are in that moment, their life, and what their life has brought. And it's a big part of the idea of the Quran that you see repeated on every single page is that there's nothing in this life that isn't in some way, it all holds a weight to it. It's all important because everything in this life and the effects that you have on other people and the wrong that you do and the good that you do and everything that you've done, it's all seen, it's all held on to, and ultimately it will all be brought back to you. So there's always a warning about a person and their the biggest warning of the Quran is that, like the evil you do in private to people, the things that you threaten them with, or the ways that you oppress people, these things are actually seen, and that you're actually not getting away with them. It's not that you won't get away with them. You're currently not getting away with them because they're already known about. And so it's not so much of a historical book. It's really concerned with us right now.
Right. And like the realities of what's going on. Like, yeah, you might see people who are oppressive, who are living in wealth or who are living in pleasure, right? But that's just for a short time, right? It'll be mentioning these things and bringing you back and kind of bringing you to the inner, what's happening on the inner of the reality that we're looking at. And in fact, if you, with your permission, I could even mention a short chapter of the Quran. I could say it briefly in Arabic and then explain it as an example.
Yeah, go right ahead, man. We got no time limit.
Okay, so أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. This is a full chapter of the Quran. There's some chapters that are quite long.
That's my kind of reading. Like it's short. Sounds like. I mean, like
yeah.
Well, the second half of it, yeah.
Now the audio version, I'm not going to be too good at. I'm like, okay, well,
right.
This sounds great.
Because some of them are very short to where like part of the functions of the Quran too is like even in these very short chapters that if you just heard these couple of lines,
right,
that it would tell you an essential message from God. Mm-hmm. And so to translate that one, every chapter of the Quran except for one begins with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, which means in the name of God, the most compassionate and the most merciful.
Mm-hmm.
And then this chapter, which I was reciting, it begins Wal Asr, which is by it's God is swearing by like the declining of time, right? By the passing of time. And then he's saying Innal insana lafi khusr, that certainly all of humanity is at a loss. Right? So you're seeing it's kind of taking you right, time is passing and now humanity is at a loss, and there's this kind of seriousness in that. And then it says illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat. It says except for those who believe and those who do good actions. And then وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, those who enjoin one another, right, who are calling one another to patience and who are calling one another to truth. And so even in just this short chapter, right, it's kind of giving you an insight into how the Quran is working, right? And you would recite that in prayer, for example, congregationally, everybody would hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're getting in that is a reminder, okay, time is running out, right? People were at a loss unless we take things seriously and we believe and we do good and we have community, right? This is what you need. You need brothers and sisters who are together, who are reminding each other, calling each other to truth, calling each other to patience. And so that's kind of an example of how the Quran reads and how it affects people and how you're interacting with it.
Yeah, I can tell you how my instant reaction when I hear that. So I'm like a super glass half full person, which, it is what it is. Sometimes I probably shouldn't be, but at the same time, I believe humanity as a whole is still overwhelmingly good. We just don't necessarily see it because good is humble.
Mm.
So, but the last part of it, it says to me like, yes, do what you can to make your world good, So that it makes a lot of sense and it reads pretty straightforward. Of course, I don't know the interpretation. I'm just taking it for what you told me, but it sounds like it's, almost like kind of not affirmations, but it's just kind of common sense understanding of good. Like, what would you say the main tenets of your religion would be? Like, what would be the core values?
Yeah, core values.
If that's a thing, like, how Christianity is, I kind of always just go to the golden rule.
Mm-hmm.
Type stuff,
right? Well, so that golden rule is something that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, he said that you do not believe until you love for your brother what you love for yourself, right? So that's expressed there. And when you're a student of knowledge, right, which is the term that we use for like someone who's studying, right? So like studying to become an imam or just has taken on the path of religious knowledge. When you're a student of knowledge, if you begin studying the narrations of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, the first narration that they teach you is be merciful to the ones on the earth, and the most merciful will be merciful towards you. Like this is the meaning of that narration, right? Show mercy to the people in the earth, and the most merciful and the mercies in the heaven will be merciful towards you.
See, that's, for me, it's comforting to hear. I mean, I knew that, like, listen, good and bad people across the world. But, you know, to hear you explain it, it's like, yeah, that's what I figured. I just never have dove into it. So why, like, I know when Christianity, like back in the day, it used to be a really brutal religion too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is it misconstrued sometimes? And, you know, there's violence committed in the name of a religion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, I mean, I'm sure people who are coming from a perspective of, you know, they've just seen, you know, seen terrorism and seen wars in the Middle East and heard all these horror stories. That when they hear what I'm saying, it's just like, what is this guy even talking about? You know, this is a totally different world.
What's relatable?
Yeah.
Like, and especially a lot of, you know, like in Appalachia, you know, most people know somebody who went to Afghanistan.
And
came back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge. I mean, everybody knows that, you know, everybody knows somebody, or it was them or something. And they brought back, you know, they have all of their own ideas that they brought back from that. And, you know, that's the biggest thing we run into. Like we did events in a small area. We went to Afton. That's my home turf. We went to Afton. We went to a little spot and we set up and we did a like public Ask About Islam thing. And the people that came were very respectful and we had a good time. But the people on the internet who didn't show up.
Yeah, no, they're not respectful at all.
And they were saying all kinds of stuff that I would have said at one point, probably. I mean, I was terrible. So it's like, I used to be quite bad about this sort of stuff too. And I mean, but people, the stuff they were saying, you know, a lot of it does come back to, it's recycling the same tropes that were introduced early on. And that is, there seems to be this fear that Islam, no matter what it says it is, it's hiding some kind of secret thing and it wants to bring it into the country and then pull the sheet off. And then
like a Trojan horse type thing.
That's the word people use.
Sure.
They use that word all the time.
Right.
Yeah. And I appreciate y'all's willingness to have this conversation because y'all know, I mean, nothing but respect by it, but I want people to understand, like, and on their, you know, let's just play devil's advocate here and to go where they're coming from. Like, there's a lot of emotion. And when you have a war that seems to be going on that, you know, is over a lot of people, is over religion and a combating of values. And then you just, like, we typically like to just put things in a box and say, okay, here's the answer. You know, all of this is bad. All of this is good. You know, but the thing is like you mentioned it, like when you have a personal conversation face to face, you know, if we could do that across the world, probably wouldn't never be another war. But people are scared of people who don't speak their same language. Like when you did the verse, I'm sure there's people listening that they got a little scared of like, well, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what he's saying. And it's, you know, it's kind of a simple-minded way of thinking that I'm trying to break with this episode.
Right.
So, you know, what would you say to those people on what causes violence in the name of religion when it comes to, now listen, Christianity has people that rationalize for hate too, like Westboro Baptist Church. I mean, they haven't done attacks and things like that, thank God, but they've said some very hateful things. And there's been times of Christianity in the past, you know, I think it's like, I can't remember, is it called the Crusades or something, where, you know, millions of people were killed under the name of religion. So what would you say to them on how they can understand?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to acknowledge that, like, people who have seen what they've seen from the media representation of Islam and who are recalling 9/11 and these types of things, and they look at Islam and they don't want to learn anything else about it, and they're angry at it, and that's an extremely understandable reaction. It makes complete sense, you know, and that people wouldn't have sympathy towards it because the image that's depicted of it is very ugly. And like I said, I'm very familiar with that image. And so I get where they're coming from. of having any kind of hesitancy of even having some kind of sympathy towards it, right? Because what's underneath, right? What's making all these things happen? When I think we need to just be realistic about the fact that we have been a part of a lot of the wars in those areas. And usually when you're at war in an area, you're not making a huge effort to show the virtues of your enemy. You know?
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's one side of the coin. The other side is that it's like, absolutely, people weaponize the religion against their own people. But when you look at terrorist organizations and Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Boko Haram and all these types of things, like the scholars in those countries, the overwhelming majority of Islamic scholars are writing defenses against them, right? They're writing condemnations. They're having hundreds of scholars sign these things. They're the victims of these of the terrorist groups themselves, often first and foremost.
Sure.
And what's interesting is that what I found through a lot of these conversations is that the folks who are really against Islam and find that it's very violent and oppressive, that basically what's happening is that they agree with the terrorist organizations that that's the true interpretation of Islam.
Right.
When the vast majority of Muslim scholars today, throughout history, and there's many works, there's works that have been translated in English. If you look up A Refutation Against ISIS by Sheikh Muhammad Yaqubi, it's been written, and it was signed by hundreds of scholars. But people aren't aware of our own traditions' active engagement and speaking out against those things. And when you look in the text themselves, there's no room for this. Like even, a famous verse that's commonly cited, and I'm just paraphrasing the meaning on some of these things that I'm referencing. But if you look, you'll see that just from my memory, it's quite close. Is they mention the verse of the sword, right? Where there's a verse in the Quran that says, catch and kill the polytheists or whatever, wherever you find them.
What's polytheist?
The people who worship other gods or disbelievers,
gotcha.
You could say, right? And so people hear that verse and it's like, wow, this is an intense verse. But what does the next verse say? The next verse says, if they incline towards peace, make peace with them.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh.
It was talking about in a situation of war, you fight your enemies.
Stand up for yourself unless they want to extend their
right.
hand.
And then once you guys make
Gotcha.
peace, you make peace.
Gotcha.
Right? But if you're at war, you got to be at war.
Context.
So, and there's a lot of instances like this of that if people see something talking about war, it's in a situation of war. But that's balanced with if there's peace, if there's harmony, there's always an intention to preserve that.
That's a really good answer. So to kind of keep this going, so Old Testament type stuff. So are there instances in the Quran where someone may take something literal, like people used to take, like putting gay people to death and things like that were taken literal in the Old Testament too? Like, because to be honest, if you took the Old Testament literal, you're going to get the death penalty really quick. Like there's a lot of things in there that has a lot of violent acts that people disagree with. And does the Quran have things that are taken literal like that too sometimes?
I mean, it's difficult to... The short answer is that all of the Quran is taken very literally.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that we don't, like, our laws weren't for then, and then now we've updated them. And I think that that's part of what is challenging for people coming from a Western background looking at Islam. That's probably one of the more kind of frightening things, is that we, by and large, have stuck to how things were revealed. But you also won't see things that bring that kind of violence into society. And now there are going to be, the reality is that if we were going to go into the details of point by point, which I'd be happy to do with people, of how it looks in the modern world, that can be done. But there's obviously a lot of scholarly assessment that needs to be done to understand and to contextualize how verses are understood now and where and in what systems.
Right.
But they're like the same kind of tension that can be felt sometimes between the Old Testament and the New Testament, right? Of that, well, are the laws erased or are they not erased? Because that's kind of what's.
So there's no New Testament of the Quran.
There's no New Testament. Exactly.
Always,
it's all the Quran, and we believe that all of those laws are exist today.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it's not so much about whether people take it literally or not. It's more about whether or not they have an understanding of the holistic picture of the religion. Because it's like, yeah, there's lots of things that are literal in the Quran as it is literal book, but at the same time, it's about how those things are actually supposed to be implemented, how those things were implemented by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him. And so I think part of what this tension that is in Christianity is that people are going to read something that wasn't intended for a certain purpose, like it was the telling of history,
right?
And they're going to misunderstand it as a commandment for them in that moment. And then they're going to do it. Somebody said, well, so-and-so did this in the old law, so I'm going to do that. Well, the old law was abolished. So that whole argument doesn't exist with us.
Sure. Well, so the way I look at it, so it's a very, very small percentage. I mean, I don't even know. It's probably barely readable, the people that turn it into violence. Like there are, people that practice it, which we'll get into a minute about, because I want to talk about, women and homosexual rights and things like that have always steered me away from certain religions. But like how I see it is one sentence and people are handling snakes when it comes to Christianity. And there are a large majority of Christians that are like, that's crazy. Right. I don't want to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how I'm equating it. Now, granted, how I feel about snake handling, do what you want, don't hurt anyone but yourself. I hope you don't get hurt. But
if you do, I mean, you shouldn't have.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I see it as like there have been people to use Christianity for violent acts too. Like that's just how I see it. I see it as a human error thing of like misinterpretation, a bunch of environmental factors going on, impressionable people, different things.
And for us, like you're saying, one verse and people are handling snakes. I mean, you can't make that kind of mistake with Islam, in our opinion, because it's like everything in Islam is seen in the context of the rest of the religion.
Okay, yeah.
Like, we don't have that, what the Christians call it, there's the sola scriptura, people who just do the Bible, literally only the words of it. They don't read any interpretations of it. They don't listen to what anybody has to say about it. They pick it up and they read it and they just do what happens. And that's just not our approach.
Gotcha.
And at the end of the day, I mean, every Muslim community, it should have somebody who is an elder, who is a teacher, who you're going to be going to and asking this type of stuff about. Right. You would never get to the point where you've lifted the snake into the air. Somebody would have said, oh, by the way, you don't have to pick up a poisonous snake because that's not what that means.
Drink strychnine.
Or if you're lifting the snake, it's like, okay, if you're going to lift the snake, but that's not Islam. Yeah. Because there's a degree of consensus there. And I guess like in terms of addressing the different like terrorist groups that have emerged across the world too, is like, you have to look at what's actually happening in that area. And these are areas with oppressive governments, no economic opportunities, often very low education, and civil wars. And I mean, were there people quoting scriptures in the Civil War in America? But that's not a war about Christianity. Right. There's a lot of other factors that are going on in that.
That's a good way to put it.
But religion is a big, like, I think that part of it too is just that they're seeing like religion is not openly as big. It's not acceptable to use religion in rhetoric as much for wars and things like that on this side of the world now.
Right.
It's just not as big of a part of most people's lives.
Yeah.
And so in those communities, religion is a part of everything in their life. So if there's a civil war, if there's a whatever, they're going to twist it in a way that they're able to advance their other purposes.
And like it's the same in this country. Like for instance, we're Americans. What do we love? What Americans love? Individual freedom, right? Freedom to do this. We're all free. And so when we have to rally the public for wars now, the American government it says, well, we're going there because the people need individual freedom. Because that's what people like here. So that's what they get them excited with.
Yeah, it's so complicated and intricate, and always the poor lose.
Yeah.
Always.
They're always fighting in it.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, you look, again, you're looking at the armies and the terrorists, it's like a lot of times in those situations, it's as simple as like, hey, do you want to get back at the people who robbed you of your opportunities? Or do you want to get back at the people who have taken your family from you?
Right.
Or and people say, yeah. And then they're going to have some motivating rhetoric behind that, whatever they can pull.
And I would hope that people in Appalachia, I hear a lot about I've seen people on these things. We go out, we do outreach. People on the internet, they're like, we didn't get enough of these guys in Afghanistan, say stuff like that. And it's like, I would hope they would have some sympathy for somebody getting recruited into an army when they're young in a place where they don't have much opportunity.
Right.
Because let me tell you, that happened to most everybody.
Right.
So to go
fight for something. Yeah.
Had no way out of anywhere except for going through the army. They weren't necessarily true believers in getting Afghanistan individual freedom, but they did need a job and they needed somewhere to go.
Right. No, yeah. Well, it's hard for us to put ourselves in other people's shoes. And something like that is just so contrary to anything we've ever known, like life over there. I mean, what a country where you can practice the religion of your choice, for one. What a country where you can DoorDash a toothbrush to your house without, bombs dropping over your head.
We were actually talking about that on the way.
Yeah. Like
DoorDashing a toothbrush.
It's
Well, I think the thing about that though is that we're we're tempted to think that the people over there necessarily always they want that there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure nobody has any objection to DoorDashing a toothbrush anywhere in the world, but I mean to say that a country where like we tend to assume that a lot of this kind of American thing we got going on, we're different, we're the best, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We tend to assume that everywhere has that same mindset and that they want us to bring it to them. But the entire world, we've been around, we've been to different places. He's been a lot more than I have, but I grew up in, I had that upbringing, very limited time, dropped out of high school, freshman year, and we went to West Africa for the first time recently to study. We were in Senegal.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, people over there, they could get a lot of it. It's just that the society, they don't want it. Their society it's a collective society. It's built on a single principle. And they view things in light of that, not in light of, I need to be my most authentic self. Because honestly, people around the world, they don't have time to think about being their most authentic self.
Right. Or like skiing or
they got problems,
climbing.
and they got things they got to do. And ultimately what they want more time to do is they want more time, if they do want it, to advance the community, to build this thing. That's the same thing that they want, to be with their families.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was all sorts of rallying around during those wars and whatnot in the areas. You had a lady on, some congresswoman was put a burqa on and said, look, can't you believe they have to wear this? We got to go there and blow them up. And, it's like, are they any better off now?
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So that's, so it's called a burqa. Is that correct?
That's a separate thing. Yeah.
Okay.
There's several different terms referring to different styles of covering. The most basic and encompassing would be hijab.
Hijab, yeah.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
Gotcha. So What is the basis behind that? Because I know, like, for a conservative Appalachian, they'll look at that and it's something visual they can point at and say, that's different. I don't like it. So
Totally.
what is the concept?
I'd have to ask them what they would do if they saw, Mother Mary walk up.
Peace be upon her,
Peace be upon her,
Right.
Because, I mean, and because a lot of people, they can understand this when it's people like them doing it.
Okay.
Or what they've imagined or something they're used to. I mean, veiling in the church, I think that's a very common thing.
That's a good point. So Mary did have...
Yeah, it's a sign of, modesty, piety. It's just...
Okay.
It's kind of, it's what befits. It's what befits the status of people. That's what that's what we should do. It's and when you go to a Muslim country too, you see that the men also, they have a lot of care, the little things, they're important to us, and how we look, how we dress, the things that we do, what we eat, all of that's important to a Muslim.
Right.
Like you won't see, an adult man going out in shorts.
Yeah,
if he's like a very religious man. I mean, one of my teachers said that when he was in Syria and he was studying, if he even went to take his trash out in a short sleeve shirt, his teachers would be like, Imam, like cover yourself, because he was a person of knowledge, and so even that, like an informality like that was looked down upon. And yeah, like he's mentioning, I've never seen a depiction of Mother Mary, peace be upon her, without a head covering.
Sure.
And this was very common traditional clothing. Even now we see, Hutterites, Mennonites, they're groups of American or Western religious movements that cover their head, and it's not that big of a deal. But the origin of it for us is in the Quran. God mentions for women to bring their head covering over their chests, right? And so basically, it's a modesty thing.
Okay, so it's just traditional clothing out of respect, kind of thing.
It's a when you become Muslim, as Muslims, we believe that, just as every group of people and every single belief system has, that there is various levels of, there's a line between when a person is dressed in a way that's, not enough, too much. There's an understanding of all of that. And so, for us, the understanding is that, the women cover their heads. The men, depending on where you are, they quite often have a hat that they would wear. And wear long sleeve shirts, whatnot. It's about modesty. People get it's a very big thing people talk about. I'm going to tell you something that my wife said. If she's watching, she was telling me, she,
what's her name?
Audrey, if this is your thing.
Shout out, Audrey.
She told me, we're both converts. So she converted and she started wearing it. And so she wears the head covering, and she told me, she was like, it's funny. A lot of people, they seem to have opinions about it, but nothing changed for me. I'm still seeing straight out, like, nothing changed for me. Everything looks the same to me. It's just, it changed for them.
Oh,
it changed for everybody around me, but nothing changed for me. I mean, here I am just looking, doing my thing. But she's like, but other people, they just can't, they just have a problem with it. They can't stand it.
So, and I'm always reverting this to Christianity because I want to help people compare certain things. So how there's like a thou shalt not judge, which we don't pay attention to it, but we're not supposed to judge people. Is there, with your religion, is like, let's just say, Audrey went out without a head covering.
That
Adam, would you judge her, or is there kind of like a non-judgmental factor when it comes to that? Like,
we're supposed to be focused on ourselves first and foremost at the end of the day, but
right?
There is still. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like there's a reality that people should follow the religion to the best of their ability. But to look like, I think it's a very low habit for people to be looking at people and saying, oh, she needs to cover more, she needs to, things like this. This is the behavior of a low person.
Right. Because also for everything that a woman has to do, it's not like, at the end of the day, men aren't supposed to be staring at a woman anyway. You shouldn't just
Right,
be
exactly.
leering at some
Yeah,
woman,
yeah.
you know. And, and
This
if
is-
you've stared at her long enough from a distance to recognize her, that's her. Where's she going? Why is she doing this? It's like you've already gone too far. You need to focus
in
on
fact,
yourself.
this is very important. Of the Quranic commandment, if I see a woman without who's not covered, I need to lower my gaze. The Quran says you lower.
So you just
lower your
you focus
eyes.
on your reaction of respect and like not.
They focus on
Gotcha.
their end. We focus on our
Got
end.
it.
And
Right.
we don't
You're
think
not
about each
you're
other.
not
and-
necessarily disrespecting them. You're just making sure to respect your own journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
when you see the
Exactly.
Muslim world, like, you know, it's interesting because people don't think about like Senegal, West Africa as like, you know, this big hub of Islam, but it's like 95% Muslim. It might even be higher than that. And it was a place that converted. It didn't convert through conquest. It didn't anything like this. And you see it's a very religious society, and you see women in all forms of the head covering unbothered. And I think because people have this perspective, you know, they see Iran or something, that like Muslim countries, it's like a state policy to wear that head covering. I don't know if that's true in Iran. I don't know much about what, you know, the Iranian government and whatever, but that has never been in like Islamic law something that is enforced like that.
Oh, really? Okay, so it's kind of like a government made, like
The way
maybe
that
someone
they do it. Yeah. Like you don't read in Islamic law, woman showed up to court because she wasn't wearing the head covering.
Right.
And like that.
Although to be fair, like thinking about it, I think that in those traditional societies where again Christians are wearing head coverings, you know, this
Yeah.
kind of thing, that it might be quite shocking. But like if you're studying the religion, the rule is for the women to cover those, and the women have areas of their body that they need to cover in public, and the men have areas of their body that they need to cover in public. I've never come across something of how you should react if somebody is not following that, other than you should lower your gaze.
Gotcha.
And it's part of it's
As
an
far
issue
as
of
the-
respect, you know, like when we outside of marriage, there's a you know, outside of marriage, there's a restriction on how the opposite sexes are going to interact with each other. And so there's this element of respect that's like, I'm not going to do anything with you that's reserved for marriage outside of it. And that includes staring at you. It includes, you know, there's just all sorts of things where it's like, that's just a boundary. Doesn't mean that we're not business partners or this or that or whatever. It doesn't mean there's any fundamental disrespect or I think less of you or anything like that. It's just that I got to respect myself and I got to respect you. And that's that. You know?
That's a good way of putting it. It makes sense because, you know, people could see it as disrespect unless you're saying like, no, I'm on my journey. I'm trying to do what I feel is right on my religious journey. Like that's nothing about yours. That's your journey.
Because I know
So-
people think sometimes looking away from somebody may be a sign of disrespect or something like that. I can see how the
Sure.
culture, you know, certain cultures have that. But at the same time, I don't know any woman who says, I went out today and it was really nice because all the men were just staring, making me really, you know, like I was walking to my car in the parking lot and all the men stopped and stared. That was great. I don't know any woman who would say that. They would say I had the worst day because this man kept leering at me, you know?
I got you. Okay. That's a very understandable way of breaking it down. All right. So another big one. Let's go ahead and tackle it. So I talked about, I have a lot of gay friends and I have, throughout the years, just some of the best people who were also gay, and I could care less. The way I live my life is I want someone to be happy, and as long as they're doing good for the world and leaving the world a better place, I'm going to try and do the same. It doesn't make sense for me to not like someone because of who, you know, legally who they love. So that's just, it's pretty basic for me. It's literally, I broke it down with Chip when he was on here,
Right.
the Methodist pastor. I just said it's literally someone's preference pizza to cheeseburgers. Like it has no meaning in my life on who someone loves legally. Now, you know, it's a whole nother thing. When you're talking about kids and things like that. That's nothing to do with this conversation.
Get it.
But how does the religion, like, what's the stance there? Are there gay Muslims out there?
So this is a really good and important question of that we can kind of weave in a lot of important topics with this, in that, like, are there gay Muslims? Yeah, absolutely. Because being gay, even acting upon it, doesn't take one out of Islam, right? That wouldn't remove somebody's Islam. But also, like, something that I think is really important for people to understand is that this notion of homosexuality as an identity is a pretty modern notion. And so there's often these kind of big reactions to the idea of certain acts being prohibited, because it's like, okay, so certainly same gender sexual activity is prohibited, and there's no situation that can make it permissible. That is the rule in Islam. And sexual interaction between the opposite genders can only occur in marriage, right? So outside of that, this idea of, like, that as an identity that deserves to be condemned, or it's not conceptualized like that, where I feel that in the West we're looking at it and it's like, okay, so you prohibited acting on this element of a romantic relationship, and that means that who I am is bad, and that's like God rejecting me because of, like, he's stopping me from being happy, and he's rejecting who I am. And that's a big feeling, right? So if you're seeing that prohibition, like, coming down on you in that way, I completely understand why people would be really put off by that. But it's not I'm trying to think of how to best. So we were saying that, right, it's addressing the act, and then there's the identity, and then the sense of that you can't be happy without it. This is one of the big things, is that in the West, we idealize two romantic relationships as, like, the source of happiness. And then on top of that, sexual fulfillment as, like, if I have a great spouse, and, I'm able to be sexually satisfied, these are big parts of having a happy life.
Meatloaf on Thursdays.
Right. Meatloaf on Thursdays. But these parts, like, from an Islamic perspective, one, they're not guaranteed to people in general. Being married isn't guaranteed to people. Even if you're married, having that part of your life be something that's fulfilling is not guaranteed to people. Mm-hmm. Like, if these are criteria for happiness, then a lot of the world is prevented from happiness through a variety of circumstances, regardless of that prohibition.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's where kind of, which I critically think everything. But if I read a rule that says, okay, well, a man can't be with another man, or a woman can't be with another woman, like, it's just not part of the thing, my brain just tells me, we're like, I don't understand why. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, of course, I get it.
I get by, let's just say, okay, well, you can't procreate. Well, how I look at it is like, okay, well, an overpopulated world, what's an overpopulated world going to do? Scientifically, we're going to figure out how to not procreate. So,
and for us, it's not like you can't procreate. We don't have any of that reason or rationale about it. Ultimately, for us, even marriage, procreation isn't the primary reason of it. The primary reason is just companionship. And there's a lot of different kinds of companionship, but it's one of the kinds of companionship. Ultimately, that's first and foremost. It's, you guys, it says that the married couple, they are They're there just to be.
That they are from each other and for each other to live in mutual love and tranquility. Is an ayah in the Quran, a rough translation of it.
And there's people that go Old Testament. It's like, I want to have 35 kids if the Lord says for me to have,
Right.
They like there's a interpretation there of like, well, I'm not supposed to stop the ability from having kids, so in turn I'm just going to keep on, keeping on. However many kids we have is how many the Lord decides, and then they have 20 kids. I think that would be a little pandemonium if everyone lived that way. We'd run out of resources,
right?
But so it's mainly over the companionship of going through life.
Yes,
and it's a challenge,
right? There's a challenge of there's a growth that comes through it, and a means of companionship and of lawfully expressing a desire if you're able to.
Right.
But again, there's rights and responsibilities in that relationship too that every straight, healthy person might not be able to enter into. And if they enter into it, they might be, prohibited from this through the circumstances of life and these types of things from that being a source of happiness to them in any case. It could be a great harm to them. So like this idea that being able to be intimate with who you want to, or like fulfill every desire, and that being linked to happiness, this is a very kind of American perspective that we carry into many, many areas of our life. And it's important to acknowledge that when you're saying it's like the difference between pizza and a hamburger, like that's a great analogy, because in our religion that matters actually.
Right.
Like
the little things matter.
The name of the religion, Islam, it means submission, right? Submission. And we find submission through finding peace through remembrance of God.
Mm-hmm.
So every choice we're bringing some kind of remembrance of God into, and we're submitting a part of ourselves, and we're remembering God as a servant. And so, and people impose these types of, guidelines on themselves for all sorts of things, depending on their different goals.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be fit, then you're going to navigate your food in a certain way. You're going to, navigate your relationships in a certain way. They're going to revolve around these types of things. And so ours revolve around surrendering to God.
Gotcha.
And so even decisions, right, of, well, where did that meat come from? Right? Is this permissible meat? Was it slaughtered by someone who's monotheistic? Right? Is it pork or is it not pork? Like even in these small decisions, consciousness of God comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very clearly stated in the Quran that it's like, what the ayah that comes to my mind is al-hayat ad-dunya illa al-mata' al-ghurura, that the enjoyment of this life is nothing but the enjoyment of delusion. Like there's no desire that you can fulfill in this life that will bring you happiness. And when you remove that idea that, okay, if I just had the right relationship, or if I was able to have the right romantic partner, or, become great at skiing and rock climbing, musician, all of these types of things, if you remove the idea that those things will make you happy, like as a rule, fundamentally, then the prohibitions don't have that same kind of sting.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see in our world, in our society, especially, people have been chasing the next thing to make them happy, and it's gotten more and more extreme.
Sure.
To the point where now it's like you have people, they're on a fundamentally dysfunctional level where if everything isn't this hyper specific extreme thing, then they're bored of it. And I think it just gets, there's this idea that if we were just able to tweak these aspects of ourselves and make us ourselves this way, and, I saw a thing recently of this guy interviewing a woman who said she's surgically making herself into a snake. She took her ears off, took her nose off.
Sure, yeah.
And it's like every there's a plateau where she would reach where she would say, and I'm happy after a bit, and I was comfortable with it for a while, but then this thing kept nagging on me about how the ears, they weren't quite snake ears. And I would be happy when I got that, and then the tongue, and then the this, and then the that. And it's like that thing, it's always going to nag at you. If you're still playing the game by the rules that you've set, it's always going to nag at you.
The desire fulfilling game, yeah.
That's relatable, super relatable, because and I'm very grateful with my life. I do love my life, but at the same time, like, I've had this, I don't know, ability to get obsessed with like certain skills, like, you know, video editing, storytelling, this and that and the other, and I'll just keep going full tilt until I reach the next level, then the next level, then the next level. And granted, it really helped me as an entrepreneur, but even inside, that's not, you know, I enjoy doing this, but it's still, I don't feel fulfilled.
I mean,
I just keep going.
I keep feel going.
Yeah.
That's the human condition. It's talked about in the Quran a great deal. The human condition, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's you know, that's what Al-Asr, right? That's the whole thing we were talking about with that first verse, is that there's this sense of loss, right? A sense of emptiness, except for, right, finding this belief, right? Developing a relationship with God, doing good, developing a community that's doing good. And that's, you know, and even when you see the reminders in that, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, right? You're reminding each other of patience, right? What does that imply? It implies that things are hard or still going on. Right? That your community, that you as an individual, that your community, you guys are going through things and you're dealing with the challenges of life, but you have this understanding of the world, an understanding of your purpose. You're doing the best you can, and you're together in it, and you're reminding each other.
Community's everything. You know, regardless of, you know, whoever's listening. Now, granted, I'm agnostic. I've talked about it several times, but I think, you know, you was talking about being an atheist at one point in your life. Like, I don't want to be an atheist. I don't want to be like,
right.
There's nothing, like, we're all, we're flying around this universe and then that's it. That, you know, lights out. I don't want to be like that. I know there's something there, but, you know, I guess the last question on that tough question, you know, which I'll get into, you know, that the gay issue is particularly very tough. I've heard about in some countries, you know, practicing Muslim countries is like, there are people recently that have been put to death for certain reasons. And you know, not that it's because of the religion, but I think it's the human error of the interpretation of the religion that causes it. But can two gay Muslims live a happy life and get into heaven? I mean, I guess that's the main question.
Well, one, nobody who I feel is, you know, approaching God reverently would say, oh, this person's going to go to heaven or this person's not going to go to heaven. I could never speak on a topic like that. What I can say is that the act of being intimate in same-sex relationships is a sin, and they should seek forgiveness for it. And that's that. That's not a barrier to heaven more than other sins. And you know, you mentioned because I've actually never come across something in about the Muslim world being particularly or more violent towards gay people than the non-Muslim world. I've never personally come across it, except for people saying, "Oh, maybe they threw."
And maybe that's just where that come from. Is like, I mean, it can hear something,
right? Yeah, it can be pretty bad here.
Yeah,
sure,
exactly.
Oh yeah. Listen, like, people as a whole can discriminate thoroughly. Like, we've shown that over the course of history. It's not, you know, like I just did a story about a majority of people that were hanged at West Virginia Penitentiary. Large majority were black, and in the late 1800s, early 1900s, I don't have the ability to have faith in West Virginia during that time period to know that they got that correct every single time. You know what I mean?
Right.
So Now, granted, this isn't about the death penalty and people's thoughts on it, but that's just an example of like, listen, humans are flawed.
Mm-hmm.
But I respect that that's what the religion states and that's how you live. But also, I can respect that it doesn't sound like you focus on discriminating and looking down on people for
we're not seeking people out to find their flaws.
Sure,
right.
That's not right.
It's no difference in severity than really. I mean, well, I don't know. I've never come across anything that depicts it as significantly different than just heterosexual relationships outside of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that marriage can't make it permissible. And so there's something on that I think I'll bring up an example of, kind of tying into like what people might consider like an Old Testament law and how those things could all work together related to this issue.
Mm-hmm.
Of that in the Quran, it mentions that if people are intimate outside of marriage, then they're to be lashed. Right? They should be lashed. And the hadith, it mentions that if it was a married person who went outside of marriage, then they should be stoned to death. Right? And
which
so
has that has happened, correct?
Yes, it's happened,
sure
but here's, and so that would apply to other relationships outside of a homosexual one as well.
Right.
But here's right when you hear that, one thing that comes into somebody's mind is like, well that's crazy because the people could go and just accuse people and lash them. One, falsely accusing somebody of that is a huge crime, and the requirement to convict somebody on that is that there needs to be 4 eyewitnesses of the sexual act taking place with certainty.
Goodness.
And these people
Right?
can't have, they can never have lied before publicly. Like people can't
Right.
know them as untruthful.
They have to be known
Everybody
to
has a
be,
good opinion of them.
Yes, they have to have been known to be righteous, upright people. So like basically what you're seeing in that rule is it's a rule illustrating the severity that should never be able to be publicly enforced.
Mm-hmm.
We should never get to the point where people are intimate to the point where 4 pillars of the community walking by have them in the middle of the road committing the act. We should never get to that point as a society where that lack of shame is in the world.
Have you been downtown Beckley? No, that was totally a joke, y'all.
No, trust me, come to Charlottesville.
Oh Lord, I'm sorry.
No. But so it's
I gotta lighten it up some.
No,
but yeah, go ahead.
Even taking that, right? So then there are instances where people have been put to death for it. And the instances actually in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, which I can't talk about. There's crazy stuff that happens in Muslim countries all the time. Yeah. From a scholarly perspective, I haven't heard anybody say that there is a Muslim country that is running the Sharia in the correct way, how it was understood classically anywhere in the world. I don't know anybody who says that about. Some they might see as closer to others in certain areas. But in any case, the instances of where this penalty was imposed on people for adultery in the life of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was when people came to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and confessed. And when they came to him and confessed, they asked for the penalty. And he would turn them away. He would ignore them. And then they would say, I committed adultery. And he ignored them. He said, I committed adultery. And he would ask, are you sane?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So he's giving them another out. Right? Because if they say, no, I wasn't sane, then they have an out. So he said, were you insane? And he said, no. He said, so what do you want me to do? And he said, give me the penalty. Right? And then they gave the penalty, and he mentions that person will enter paradise. That receiving the penalty, like repenting and accepting it in that way, that person enters paradise. And by the way, none of this ever is done in a vigilante sense.
Nope.
Ever. We're talking about there's leaders, there's courts, there's trial, there's a real system in place. Anybody who says, oh, in America, I saw something, or this person came and confessed to me, let's stone them. That's so crazy. that would be the craziest thing.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying.
I heard it put by somebody too, that it's like these, ideally these things are happening too in societies that have a united purpose. Ideally, this is being done on a small level where communities of people who are familiar with one another, and where there's an all-pervasive idea of mercy that people are embodying in their religious practice all day, that people are understanding these things, that this is not something that is necessarily just copy and paste to the like US criminal justice system, the way we handle it here, where we're, because in the way we handle that type of stuff here, it's like, we got prisons, we got to fill them up. Prisoners equal more money. This equals more. And it's like, there's no incentive to generate people to find who have done something wrong. That's just not how it works.
No, I know what you're saying, and that's where this journey comes in. Is like I find so many relatable things across all of these different things, and then when we start getting into the nitty gritty, I'm like, that's when my critical brain kicks in, and I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, yeah, you shouldn't cheat on your wife, shouldn't cheat on your husband. The reason I feel that is just the humanity in me, but I don't want someone to die over it. But at the same time, you're explaining like the context of it is way more complicated than that. But at the same time, too, in the Bible, people would get put to death similar ways for certain reasons, different reasons. I mean, there was a group of kids that got attacked by a bear for making fun of a guy because he was bald. Like, there's all kinds of these things. Yeah, there's all kinds of things that I'm like, okay, I got to check out. But at the same time, I mean, I get the initial concept of it. It's just then when I start getting into the weeds of it, that's when I'm like, well, I'm going to just, kind of continue my path and go and feed somebody and think about it. You know what I mean? I kind of just check out of it.
I totally get that. And I think too, it's the thing is that at the end of the day, when we talk about the nitty gritty, I mean, what does that signify? The nitty gritty signifies small details. Sure. And for us, the most important details, it's our sincere belief. If a person takes the most important details, that ideally, inshallah, that's what we say, inshallah. It means if God wills it, then the small details, they don't matter as much anymore. And here's the thing, like I know plenty of people who have same-sex attraction, gay, whatever you want to say it. It doesn't keep me up at night. It's not like just because I've accepted this law, I sit up at night and I just hate and I fill the room with this swirling hate and go out and hold a sign, this and that, because that's not the aim of being a Muslim. The aim of being a Muslim is knowledge of the one God, submission, and then to love for your brother what you love for yourself.
See, I can get down with that. Like, if I ever find a religion, I'm just going to have to just say, you know what? Here's the core value for me. I'm going to follow this path, and I think this is the right thing. And this other stuff, I'm not going to pay attention to be honest. Like, I'm just going to be like, I can't really get in. But at the same time, am I really a part of that religion, though? If I'm, you know what I mean?
I resonate a lot with your perspective, and that was really kind of how I became a Muslim, really sort of kicking and screaming. You know what I mean? It's like I had objections to a lot of the prohibitions. And a big part of that, and a lot of the objections I had was for the same reason.
Sure.
It's like, well, what harm does it do? What does it, but it's a reframing fundamentally about what life is about. Like that person, again, who we're using this example of, this woman who goes and confesses to the point and insists upon being stoned. And now she's stoned and now she enters paradise. Like, from the Muslim worldview, she won. And like they mentioned that, when you enter paradise, there's a narration that mentions for the person who enters paradise that even if they had the worst life and they had nothing but suffering in their life, and God dips them once in paradise, he'll ask them, did you ever suffer anything?
Right.
And they'll say, no. Like, nothing bad ever happened to me. And then they'll take a person who had nothing but joy in this life. Well, not joy, but nothing but
We got all
pleasures, nothing but their desires in this life. And we'll dip them once in hell and ask, did you ever experience anything good? And they'll say no. So it's like this life is about, from the Muslim perspective, seeing past the veil, seeing that, and there's a real question that it sounds like you're grappling with in a real way, which I think everybody who's really serious is grappling with, which is, is the truth kind of how I want it to be? Is God how I want him to be? And that's a hard question, because it puts us right where it puts us fundamentally is the, well, God has all the power and I don't have any. And that's scary, but we're supposed to fear God, and we fear
listen,
it's like,
all of this is terrifying.
Yeah.
But
that's the ride we're
but
on,
not in a bad. It's something this is important to talk about. Like, if there was a religion that was like, did the one sentence, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, I'd follow that religion. I'd be like, that's it. But I can't, it's not something that I can sign a loan on. I can't co-sign on anything so far that I've seen. You know what I mean?
And that's the struggle. And we're all, I spent a very long time, and we talk about fear, just now he said this is also terrifying. We said, and we're on Creepalachia. So
no, it's perfect. Like, fear. Listen,
I'm a horror writer. I love horror.
We don't talk about politics, but we talk about religion.
We talk about fear because I have more fear there, honestly. And so, but when I was a kid, I had a very hectic situation going on. I loved horror movies.
Nice.
I love horror books, all of that. And I think part of that is just because there's this essential understanding that the world is actually a very frightening place. There's a lot of very frightening things that happen, and that is fine. That's actually in the DNA. Like when you read a horror novel or something like that, all of the horror and all of the terrible things that happen, they exist all for the purpose of the development of that character. Even when horrible things happen to those people, you have characters in the book, terrible things happen to them. And all of that happened for what purpose? It was the development of that character towards the end. And at the end of that story, they either win or they lose, depending on what their goal was.
Yeah.
No matter all the terrifying and awful things that happened. And I resonated with that heavily because honestly, the world is scary. And, we exhaust ourselves running from that so much. And, with us, we don't really run from it so much. We might spend maybe a lot of time, because we want to, inhabit that feeling and understand it, understand what that is. And, part of Islam is that, we don't want to run from any aspect of what if we think it's the truth, then we accept it. And I know plenty of people who, myself included, had to submit to something that just wasn't fundamentally how you wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone's looking for that, that moment of unity, where they see everything makes sense. And they see the suffering make sense, and they see, and they want to have that level of intimacy with God of like, how can I really see it all as perfect and how it was supposed to be, and find peace with that. And that's what the path is about. But, you don't get it. You don't get to enter the path on that precondition.
Sure.
Right, because the initial entrance is based on saying, okay, I'm going to take the truth, even if it's against me. And when we look at religious law, because as Muslims we believe 100% that everything happened according to the will of God, and that God decreed everything to happen. And so there's not this tension of like, oh, Satan's doing some things and God's sad about it. No, everything happened according to the command of God.
Right.
And so when we accept that some religious laws restrict us in some ways, or deprive of us of fulfilling a certain desire, or do these things, it's like, that's also just the reality of life. Mm-hmm. The reality of life is that tough things happen. Desires remain unfulfilled. Even permissible desires remain unfulfilled. conflicts, fear, tragedies, all of these types of things. And so if we can't even reconcile it in terms of the rules that God has given us to govern our own life, right? How can we see it in what's happening in the world?
Right.
How can we find that peace and that harmony?
Yeah. I think I'm a hippie. I think that's what it is. So like, there's got to be a structure. Like the structure there makes things, I don't know. I mean, any kind of structure really helps you to live a more quality life.
Well, I mean, if people say they don't like organized religion, you hear that all the time. And, it's like, well, what do they mean by that? Because if they mean people doing things at certain times and showing up to places,
right,
then it's like, that's, it's like, let's say, you know the truth and you have it. You have all this information.
Light
that
switch.
is true. And other people know it too.
Yep.
Eventually what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take all of those things that that everybody knows that were revealed to you. You have to, put them in order, put them in this and that. I mean, that's organized religion. In our view of it is the idea that, like, I don't even know where I'm going with that.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. Yeah. I'm going to take you out of the hot seat. Y'all did really good. We was in the hot seat there for about 15 minutes. But I understand, like,
we love the hot seat.
Well, no. That's what Chip told me. He's like, I love these conversations.
Yeah.
But the way y'all responded, like, I understand. I mean, the only thing, like, any kind of rule that says, homosexuality is a sin is just something that, I disagree with. But I appreciate your willingness to expand on it, and it makes a lot of sense. I don't see it as bigotry. I see it as kind of part of your journey of, like, here is the rules of life. Like, I don't think you're not punishing people because they're gay. Mm-hmm. You're just saying this is the rule, this is my journey, and this is how I'm going to live it. I'm not going to look down at someone else, and how they're doing, because that's not the point of it.
Like, we don't drink alcohol, but we don't say, like, and alcoholics are this way. Because for us, a person who drinking alcohol itself, that is the action.
Sure.
The alcoholic is not something that pervades every aspect of their being, and they've now permanently labeled an alcoholic to us.
No, yeah. Well, see, I put them in two different.
Sin.
I put one as humanity and one as a vice. You know what I mean? Like, me personally, I just believe people are born gay. Like, let's just be honest. You see some people 6 years old, you're like, okay, they're probably going to be gay. And then 10 years later, hey, Jimmy Joe's gay. That's great. Whatever. Yeah. But not honestly, that they even care. I'm just like, this conversation is like, I think typically a gay person is like, stop talking about me. Why do you care so much?
And honestly,
I guess,
like, sorry.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to, like, I guess, part of our, like, Islam's kind of issue, or at least, how I've understood it. And the issue with even kind of the whole discourse is that the West centers sexuality as identity in a unique way. Mm-hmm. Like, this idea that you're gay before a sexual experience occurs. Like, it's not that understanding of identity as that being something so fundamental is not there, right? And I think that they're, like, sexuality right now is really used as a defining mark of how people conceive of themselves. Right. And we would say that is an imbalance to have it in any direction. Mm-hmm. To be saying, like, okay, my sexual desires are a core part of who I am. It's like how you're saying, it's like what you eat. What you eat, you're an odd person if you're like, I'm a hamburger guy. I eat hamburgers all day. And there are people like that.
Let's go.
There are people like that, you know.
Yeah.
But that's odd. It's odd to have that level of affiliation with something
Yeah,
that
put it on your grave. He
that
loves
you're just-
hamburgers.
Sure,
you know?
no, yeah.
this moment of fulfilling desire, right? So it's like we probably need some more stuff in there
Yeah.
than hamburgers and sex, and you know what I mean?
No, I know what you're saying. Like that's more than a gay person. That's, Susie Q. Like that's a whole person.
Right.
And I'm not trying to define them as, there's the gay person.
No, and
it's
I
more
know
of just
that
an
at all.
understanding. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I'm not singling you out at all. I think it's a
It's a good way to-
pervasive like cultural identification. Even, people identify heavily with their heterosexuality,
Right.
and make this whole like women chasing, men chasing, this a big thing.
That's also
that
weird.
To us is,
Yeah.
and for people to talk like that and to look at people like that, and that we have a huge problem with that as well.
Gotcha.
If people are leering at women and chasing this whole thing, that we can't work with that either. And another element that we talk about with this issue, because this issue is extremely important for our generation.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's why I'm spending more time on it than some other things, is that I think it's a really important issue that ties into a lot of the kind of core differences in really this a kind of Western religion that's emerged without a formal kind of classification, and these traditional and the religion of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
I forget where I was going.
No. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think I think we've laid it out enough to give an understanding of it. It's not, I think people generally just see it as, okay, well, I can't be gay in this country. I'll be put to death. Like it's not that. It's not
definitely not that.
Yeah.
And it's also too, is the big thing is that, when it comes to Islam, it's like, in Islam, we are fundamentally concerned most with what's happening in front of us right now, wherever we are.
Sure.
Islam isn't defined by any country. It's defined by the current moment, the reality in front of you. Like for us, it's like, my daily life as a Muslim, people ask us all the time when they want to ask us about things. They ask us about what's happening in Saudi Arabia. And it's like, I haven't thought about Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Because I got to get through this day.
Yeah.
And I got it. And I have to, there's so much that applies right here, right now in this room, that it's like that takes up all of my time.
Yeah. Well, I think y'all are the perfect people to come in and talk about this, because Ammon looks like if you put a hatchet in his hand right now and a flannel shirt, like he'd just be flying out in the hills.
That was my first job, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Was
sure. Yeah. I was 15 years old I was 16. So if my boss is hearing this, he didn't hire a 15-year-old, just a 16-year-old. But I had the rope, and once the tree starts coming towards you,
right,
run. So they're just like, pull the rope, and they go run, and then the tree's coming at you, and you run. I spent a long time doing that.
You'd be a good brawny man on the paper towels. Yeah, brawny in training. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thank y'all for walking through that. So I do want to get into. One more thing on that. So with Christianity, a comparable thing that's happening right now is there's a lot of different denominations that are becoming more accepting. And there's a lot of people, I'm not going to call any religion out, but if you're listening, you know who I'm talking about. But they are religions that were among the first to have women in the pulpit, which I think is awesome. That's another big thing. When I was a kid, old regular Baptists, they wouldn't have women as preachers, and I was like, well, why not? That it was very sad for me. But so they started doing that, and then they recently started accepting homosexuality into the church, and there's a lot of traditional values that are conflicting with it, and it's kind of separating churches. So that's one way Christianity, like, it's a constant battle for most religions, this issue. But so it's not just Muslim, it's not just Christianity. Like, it's a polarizing subject, and
100%.
I wish it wasn't, but it just is. But are there denominations when it comes to Muslim? Like there's Sunni and
Shia.
Shia.
Yeah, that's
okay. What does that mean?
So the distinctions, if we kind of broke them down in their details, I think would be too obscure, would be like too kind of into the weeds to really do much for folks. But the best way to understand is that roughly 85-90% of Muslims are Sunni, and within that there's a large level of agreement, of understanding of mutual differences. Like I could go and not only pray behind but lead a prayer in Saudi Arabia, Morocco, all over the Muslim world, because we're doing stuff virtually exactly the same. And if I went to a Friday service, which is like our Sunday service, anywhere in the Muslim world, I'm going to know what's going on. And it's going to be very familiar. The differences that are there would be very, very small. The differences between, and then when you look at the Shia, which when you look within the Shia, there's a lot of divisions within the Shia itself, right? So there's like the main body of Muslims, which is the Sunnah, which is they call it the Ahl Sunnah, the people of the Sunnah. And then there's the Shia, which you could simplify it by saying that they have a particular attachment to the family of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, in a unique way that causes them to react to some things in mainline Islam, which is the Ahl Sunnah, right? But then within the Shia, there's many different subgroups, some which are like really far from anything that the Sunnis would consider Islam, and that even other Shia would consider Islam, and some that are very small differences. We could pray behind each other. We could really know what we would have a strong affinity, but there would be a few issues that we would disagree on in some cases quite strongly.
Gotcha. And so from a perspective, if you're not Muslim, let's say you're just, walking down the street, there'd be no way to tell. Like it's like, for I just mean in terms of the external differences, are the type of things that are mostly noticeable between Muslims.
Right.
Like for instance, it's not, so in Christianity, it's like, not to offend anybody, but it's like, I know a Baptist versus a Catholic.
Lord, yeah.
Yeah, when I see one, and I know a Pentecostal because I got a big swollen, but
and if you go into the churches, right, it's a fun,
very different.
They can be fundamentally different experiences.
Oh, but yes. it wouldn't be so different. Like, I don't think that anybody would, unless you knew a lot about it, like you had all the prayers in Arabic memorized and everything like that. I don't think you would notice any difference.
Okay, so like, there isn't a section that's like, oh, the Baptists are the best cooks. Like that's not in.
Well, everybody thinks.
Yeah.
The best cooks.
Baptists are. Really
I mean, when it comes to Muslim, I mean, you're like, the Shias are really good cooks, though. There's nothing like that.
I mean, they depend. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean that. Like, I don't want to remove it to a point to say that like there aren't noticeable distinctions.
Yeah,
there are definitely noticeable distinctions.
Totally.
But I guess like something that's in terms of the belief that there's no God but one God, which is the core belief, and that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, is the final messenger, and that the Quran is the book that they're reading. That's all agreed. If you go on pilgrimage, the Sunni and the Shia are there together.
Okay.
And they're interacting. And so, I don't want to say like, oh, it's all the same and it's just the tiniest little differences.
Yeah.
There are real differences to where we're separate groups. And if we talked on in nuance on those issues, we might disagree quite strongly.
Mm-hmm.
But the foundations of the religion, like fasting Ramadan, giving, paying zakat.
What's that?
That's like,
we should probably go.
Oh, no. Yeah.
No, I'm just here to, because I'm just here to do what the translating, because I I didn't know what anybody was talking about the first like year I was Muslim. I was like,
Yeah,
oh, this is
definitely.
neat. Too bad it's not in English. Somebody said, oh, it wasn't English, but it's like
I give myself I give myself a B- on this interview. I'm pretty well there. I'm there.
I think you've kept up with everything.
You're doing better
excellently.
than me,
Yeah.
way better than I've ever done. But it's like zakat is charity, and that is like there's a certain amount of money that we give to
Tithings.
it's not like tithings because it never goes it doesn't go to like the Muslim establishment, quote unquote, because we don't have it in the same way.
Gotcha.
It's like, the church doesn't require you to give money to them so that they can use it for charity. It's that money, but you could say it's like tithing, except you have to give that money directly to the people in need.
Right.
So nobody's
to go,
checking to see if you've done it. It's just like you got to do it.
well, at least in our context, yeah.
In our context,
in some contexts, it's like someone would come collect that money and then give it to the poor directly. But the money was for the poor. Like you're not building buildings with it. You're not, that's not paying the imam's salary. Nothing like that.
So there's no Kenny Copeland in the Muslim world. That's definitely good if that's the case.
They'd have to figure it out on their own, but they couldn't use the zakat. If somebody wanted to.
I've never heard of that level of wealth with religious personalities like that. Like,
are there personalities?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha.
And there are some, they'll fly first class and kind of deal, but like, oh, they've got their own private jets. They have this huge, and they're scholars with huge followings, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But with that level of wealth, I haven't seen it. I'm sure it probably
gotcha.
exists.
So by scholars, that's kind of televangelists, but not
that's like
in the same way.
It's different because it's not the person's personality in the sense that we think of a personality here is not what makes them influential. It's not like this guy's got this delivery and this brand around him. It has to do with the knowledge that they possess,
right.
The knowledge that they can give to you.
But honestly, in the West with, social media and whatever, that's a problem within the Muslim community is that's not always true, right? Because somebody who hasn't studied very much, but can make a snappy TikTok and whatever can go. And now people are listening to him and taking legal rulings from him, but he hasn't undergone because there's a lot of developed curriculums and standards of what we're expecting from somebody who is going to speak publicly about Islam or become a personality or things like that.
Sure. More things should be like that, to be honest. Like they just let me get on here and do whatever I want.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like there should be some standards. But yeah, that makes sense. So on, I do want to touch on, Sharia law. What is the idea? Yeah. What is Sharia law?
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, I've just heard what I've heard on the news of like, okay, well, they're, punishing women and, doing different things. I don't know the actual basis of it.
So the Sharia, like, that term basically refers to like religious law, right? And everything that we've talked about from a legal perspective is under the umbrella of the Sharia, right? And when humans try to understand the Sharia, they call it fiqh, which fiqh just means like understanding, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually how it's referred to, like within Muslim communities. If you're talking about like the Sharia, it's as this big kind of overarching idea. And if you're studying it, you're studying fiqh. You're studying our understandings of it. So, when you're looking at these different countries doing these things, like I mentioned, right, there's for this verse with adultery, right, and lashing people for adultery, like that people might be acting on that verse to some degree in certain countries. I don't know the details of those situations, but I've seen stuff of like people are doing video, right? Somebody on a video caught somebody doing some kind of affair and now they're getting lashed and things like that. When it's like that's like a kind of modern political interpretation, but from a scholarly perspective would be hard to justify. right? Because in the Quran, you're looking at 4 eyewitnesses, right? And now these people are saying, oh, a security camera found these people, and so a government is implementing this kind of policy. Does this make sense?
No, I'm going with you. Like, I mean, for me, it's just like get divorced. You know, like just move on. You should, you know, it's a problem. You know, 4 people saw what's good like that. That's an issue. Like,
right.
Well, I mean, in that there, no, that just shows you understand the principle of what we're saying here.
Sure.
Look, you did something 4 people saw. I mean, how people have to wonder. I mean, how is society, you know, what would have to happen for it to get to a place where anyone that we know or us would have to reasonably worry about that law applying to us?
Well,
if we had that, we're like, oh, well, if that law came into place, all the people I know this would happen to them, and say, well, that means we have a very, very rough thing going on out there that we need to figure out what to do about.
When you mentioned like you haven't seen that in writings of like governments or anything, like that's not what I want to clarify, like, this isn't an ongoing law, correct? Or is it? Like,
it's so, you know, when we're looking at like one, I don't have the knowledge of what different Muslim regions are doing and how they're enacting things and things like this. But the Sharia is a wide term, and I think that to kind of bring this into something that relates most closely to what we're talking about here, like people have this understanding that the Sharia, like if they came and asked a Muslim, like, do you support the Sharia? It's like, yeah, that's like this one really simple unified thing, right? That everyone understands its implication.
Mm-hmm.
Where basically what we're saying with we support the Sharia is that we support God's law. And that's understood by scholars, and it's taking into factor a lot of different elements.
Mm. Is it like the 10 Commandments, or is it like
more? Yeah,
the 10 Commandments. You know, like different commandments would be included in that. Like how I wash for prayer is included in the Sharia.
Right. Oh, okay.
It's like the whole overarching realm of just the things that we do and we don't do. Essentially, the word for it.
Yes, exactly.
And you know, ultimately, when people they ask about this, and I think that the biggest concern, what people are getting at, is, you know, what if someone was in charge of me and I didn't agree with what they did, and I didn't agree with their belief system? Would I be okay? That's what vast majority of people, I think, are getting at.
Sure.
And it's that, you know, the goal of Islam is not to establish a particular government that runs a certain people in a certain way. Sometimes, you know, a country that, you know, the rulers of it are Muslims. Yeah, of course, those rulers, they have to act in a way that's concordant with Islam, and they're trying to do that. But ultimately, in America, as Muslims, our biggest concern right now is that we want to reach our goal, which is knowing Allah, which is, you know, coming closer to Him. And we want to bring everybody with us there. And, you know, the best way to do that is, you know, we're going to talk to people. We're going to tell them exactly what we're about. And it's like, I think it's incredibly unrealistic to think that the idea of a Muslim court or something like that is going to be anything most people will ever even experience in another country. And even in those countries, it's going to differ a great deal between, like, one, how are those people practicing? How much is their government mixed with a different style of government, as we've seen? And then how much, and then like what is the cultural norms that have also kind of leaked into their legal tradition within that place? And it's going to be different everywhere.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying. What are some of the basics? Like you mentioned how you wash your hands. Like what's the particular way point that you wash your hands?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's, you know, you could go into a whole class, but it's like, you know, before prayer, you know, you wash yourself. It's like, you could consider it almost like a mini baptism, right? You're purifying yourself physically, but really it's a spiritual purification that you're doing before you enter into the formal ritual prayer, which is like you're standing in the presence of God.
Okay.
Right. So things like this. And then the details of, okay, what order do you wash it in? Do you rinse your mouth out? If you didn't rinse your mouth out, right? If you forgot, do you need to do it again? Or is it valid? Right. All of these kind of questions would fall under the Sharia, and how we answer those questions is fiqh.
Okay.
Right. And then, for example, I'll use another, example that I think people have heard of like, for example, stealing and having like a hand cut. I think people have heard of this. This is something in the Sharia. If you steal and you're convicted, then your hand is cut. Right. When you look
cut off.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. When you look at the details of that, you see that they're mentioning, okay, if it's of a certain value, if it's something that was stolen with certainty, if that person wasn't in a point of desperation that would cause them in a different manner. And you saw one of the senior companions, which we use companion for like disciple, right? One of the senior companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, during his rule, after the death of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, after he passed on, that there was a famine going on in their land. And so he suspended that punishment, right? He's like, okay, people as a whole are in a state of desperation right now. So that needs to be, we don't need to be doing that right now.
Hungry people,
right?
Versus, people just causing trouble.
Right.
Or
and
versus
they
stealing
mention,
because as an act of aggression towards somebody.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Like they mentioned, okay, if it was in a place that it was uncontestably, that was somebody's personal property. It was in a box. The box was closed. They went into a closed room and they opened. Like you'll see that the way that the jurists are navigating that law and understanding that law, that it's like if we see like some modern politician in the Middle East, which like Middle Eastern politics are crazy. And most of what we're talking about when we're talking about, Islamic, yada, 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 we're talking about like a couple Arab countries, when Arabs only make up 20% of the global Muslims. Like one of the largest Muslim countries in the world is Indonesia, right? Senegal has one of the highest Muslim populations. Malaysia is a largely Muslim country.
Muslims have been in America since the beginning.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
I mean, listen,
Yeah.
it's been around a long time. Has Christianity's technically been longer, right? But but yeah.
But when I say Muslims have been here since the beginning, I mean like really in our history. I
Right.
mean, people who were enslaved, who were brought over, a lot of these were Muslims.
Right.
And you have Thomas Jefferson writing or having them write letters to Thomas Jefferson in Arabic and stuff like that. And it's Islam equaling Middle Eastern politics in the Arab world is very much so something that just has occurred in our political climate.
Mhm.
When people think of Islam, you think of Arabs and you think of Afghanistan. That's usually, and those two things have something in common,
Yeah.
which is our deep political entanglement in those areas. You don't think, well, in Indonesia, I heard at the mosque they do this.
Right,
We
'cause
never hear
yeah.
that because
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, well, a big issue, I mean, let's just be honest. The majority of people, in America at least, when someone doesn't look like them, doesn't sound like them, it's hard for us to not be afraid sometimes. It's very sad. But I think having your hillbilly self in here with now you enunciate really well. I'm very impressed. But
I worked on it for a long time.
yeah, but having you in here, and Adam too. I mean, I think this is really going to help bridge a lot of gaps with people.
And
Eye for an eye stuff. West Virginia can get down all day with that kind of. You know what I mean?
eye for an eye. I mean, well, here's the thing: is like there's a lot of things that people. They say, well, that sounds real intense. That sounds real harsh. But then when you look at our experience, people can understand where it comes from. I mean, like people, when Islam was coming into the inner cities and stuff like that, those people, they were in dangerous situations and they cleaned the house. They cleaned up shop. And let me tell you, I grew up. And if there was some people with a strong connection to the truth who were willing to take care of business where I grew up, I think a lot of people wouldn't have died on meth. A lot of people
Right.
I know wouldn't still be on it. Like, go home, visit my family, run into people I know, and it's like, you don't recognize them anymore. And that was the norm. Like, it wasn't the norm in the sense that everybody does it, but it's the norm that every single person can count the people who are close to them, who have had that. We have these problems in our country. They're ravaging the country. We got fentanyl problems, we got the meth, we got that. And, when Islam was first coming to people in the inner cities there, I mean, they went and they fixed the problem. And it's like, because people were untethered for so long and they were in desperate situations without that moral guiding compass. And, it just drives them to bad things.
Sure. Well, and it could be said for many things, like Christianity too. Like, I'm of the opinion, if someone finds something that has a general peaceful structure about it, a way that they can live their life and have something to believe in that ultimately boils down to you just being a good person, I think it's absolutely fabulous. And I'm so glad that it exists for people to be able to search like that, because, I mean, being an agnostic, it's not lonely, but it's like, I'm kind of there, but I'm not really there. Kind of floating around, Yeah, like I know what's good. I know what I want to do. I know what I want to believe. But it's like, I don't really know what's going to happen when I die. You know what I mean? Like,
you just listed the human condition, though, of every. I mean, sure. I get it. Like you're on a train. Who put me on the train? Where's the train going? Mm-hmm. What happens when it gets to the stop? I mean, that's the anxiety that I think everybody is hit with at a certain point in life.
Oh yeah, I'll do that.
That's a big part of what we're talking about here.
I go and run around an asylum with a camera trying to find evidence. That's the type of person I have, of like, all right, speak to me. I gotta know. Yeah. I gotta have that tangible proof. You know?
Yeah, 100%.
But then, that's not how faith works. A lot, That's it's
not even just faith, but just sometimes it's just not how things go at all.
Sure.
Like we may never get that certain satisfactory aha moment in the way we want it, simply because a lot of people, they just don't get a lot of things.
Yeah,
it's hard out there.
Did y'all have that moment? And just a few more questions, but did y'all have that moment where, like, in Christianity, when people get baptized, you have this overwhelming sense of euphoria of like, the answer is here. I know what my life's purpose is now. It's just so beautiful to think about when people talk about, when they find God. Mm-hmm. Was there that type of moment for you all, or is it kind of like a gradual build of your faith?
I certainly feel it's like both. There's waves of those. It's like, okay, this is it. This is what I got to do. There's certainty. There's that alignment. And then you continue, and then that continually deepens. Yeah, in terms of like I feel that I'm perpetually having these, I'm always coming back to these feelings of realization, of truth, and of just gratitude to have been given what I've been given, and led to what I've been led to, whether that's religiously or just the basic comforts of life. And that kind of gratitude is, I think, a really core part of connecting to God. Mm-hmm. And that moment that people are describing at the baptism is really a moment of kind of gratitude, of guidance. And I'd say a huge goal of Islam and purpose of kind of infusing it so much in our daily life is to live in that sense of gratitude and live in that sense of contentment of a life that is aligned with purpose and with who we are at our deepest level.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Is there like a baptism for Muslim, or is it not really work like that?
In order to enter into Islam, you say the Shahada. It's kind of the first foundational pillar of the religion, which is testifying in the one God, and then testifying that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is the final messenger of God. And that, however, what you're describing is, what I think of, and what Adam has touched on here, is like it's a state of experience, of gratitude. And we have a lot of states, but the important part is that, of our struggle is, you have to keep consistent no matter what the state is, because the state comes, the state goes. Yeah, sometimes you're on cloud nine. Sometimes you are in prayer and you go places that nothing synthetic could ever bring you to. And then sometimes you have to pray anyway, even though you just lost your job and everything's falling around, but it's prayer time and you got to get up and you do it. And that's a big part of it. It's for us, is that it's navigating those states and staying exactly on the track, the straight path. That's what we say. It's like staying on the straight path. The straight path is going to take some, path might be straight. It's going through some rocky terrain.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's, to his point, one of the things that one of the great saints and scholars, his name is Sheikh Ahmed Tijani, his title is Sheikh and his name is Ahmed Tijani, would say is that being steadfast is the greatest miracle. That's like being consistent, being steadfast in our actions, in our relationship with God. That's the highest thing that people can reach for.
I like that. So, I mean, there is tenets of like, be responsible, pay your bills, right? Like, is because you're talking about not having things on earth, which I totally get, like all the excess and things like that. Is there anything that says like, well, but take care of yourself, be sure to be useful, stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Is there any mention of money?
I mean, absolutely. Money is a fantastic thing if you're, because you can take with money, you can, how one of our teachers would describe it. I believe it was Sheikh Hassan Sise, God rest his soul, who would say this, that, with money, it's like you can take something finite and make it infinite, right? You're taking the world and worshiping God with it. You're turning it into a form of worship. And you do that by taking care of your family, taking care of the people in your community, taking care of the people who need it. Like, having resources is very important, because you can look after people, you can build, you can support. And people being in situations of poverty and desperation and coming and saying, hey, you just need to connect more spiritually. You can't do that. Not everybody is going to be able to. It takes a very unique type of individual who can see past those real worldly difficulties and connect to something spiritual. You got to help them. If you're coming and saying, hey, what's really important is God, not money, you should be putting some money in their hand when you're saying that, because that's how you're showing them, hey, money's not important. We've got money, we'll help you, but what's important is God. Those things need to be reinforced. And one of the father of my teacher, the most influential teacher in my life, Sheikh Mahi Sise, God bless him. God bless him. His father, Sayyidi Ali Sise, God rest his soul, would say that work is worship. Working for the sake of God to earn, a good, honest living. That is a form of worship. That's not separate from, God made it to where our provision comes from, the sweat on our brow. And so to submit to that and to take that as a part of your relationship with God is a blessed thing.
Wow. All right. Late question. What's heaven and hell?
Oh yeah.
Question. Yeah. I mean,
I mean, that should have been early. I don't know, but I was before I forget, I want to clarify, like, because I mean, as far as Christianity goes, it doesn't really. I don't know what the exact description is there either.
Yeah.
Like, what's the description?
It's honestly very detailed in the Quran, and it's a real, like, sometimes people are like, well, is it a spiritual place or is it a physical place? It's both. This is a spiritual place and a physical place. but the physicality of it, right? The worldliness of the world we're in right now can make the spiritual harder to remember. But in the next world, I mean, those two are completely interconnected. What's happening physically is an exact mirror of what's happening spiritually. And hell for people who deny, like who don't have a single bit of belief in the oneness of God or anything in them, that's eternal. But people who had even the tiniest shred of the belief in the oneness of God, eventually they'll exit hell, even if they have to enter it for some sins that they didn't repent for or something like this. And paradise is eternal for everyone who enters it. And if you look at the places there, paradise is filled with it's like a life that is beautiful and increasing in its beauty, increasing in its joys, increasing in its peace, and it's like eternally, when the feeling when you're really in love with something, and you love something and you want to be closer to it, and you are closer to it, but
sure.
It's like that, right? It's like the love of being with something, and you're with it, and now your closeness increases more and more.
How interesting. So hell has prison sentences? Okay, well, you're going to get
a sense, but
yeah.
I mean, not years, but you're going to be here for a certain period of time for that time that you ate that thing that you shouldn't have ate or whatever.
Right. For whatever God didn't forgive or that you didn't ask repentance for, but God also, he could just overlook anything he wants. We always have to have a good opinion of God. We have a good opinion that God will overlook people's sins.
And we don't see God as a miser or somebody like that. We see him as the infinitely merciful. And we also have faith in the fact that if a person has good intention, is righteous, and does the best that they can do, then inshallah, that is the most, because we're going to mess up plenty. But the important point is that, all of those mistakes, they're happening on this trajectory of a single focus. They're not caring. They are simply errors in pursuit of the goal.
Right.
Sounds like there's way more of a variability there. Like you're building a resume over the course of your life. Instead, Christianity is like yes or no, forever. It's going to be one of these two things.
Right. Well,
but it sounds a lot more nuanced.
And I hope this doesn't come across, any type of way to anybody, but one of the big differences that I understood and felt between Christianity and its Western American manifestation, like how we're seeing it today, versus Islam, is that in Christianity, in America, it's almost like it just centers around that one moment. And then it's like, okay, now your religion's done. Like, nice, you did it, right? Now you can maybe go do the other stuff, go to church every now and then and whatever. But you've checked the main box.
Baptized.
Yes. Baptized, accepted Jesus.
We're going to make some people real mad. This is a good conversation though, but yes.
Right. And I don't, but I'm saying it's like, it's as if that check has been done. And now it's like, okay, and now to give a more, crediting, you live in the gratitude of that, or you do it, but the salvation and the effort was there. Where it's like for Muslims, that we never just check the box and are done. Like, we know that if you have the belief in the oneness of God, that eventually you'll enter the paradise, right? But it's not good manners with God to rely on that. And the idea, like being blessed with the knowledge of the oneness of God, is a blessing. And to be ungrateful for that blessing, if you're ungrateful, that blessing could be taken away. You're not guaranteed that blessing just because you had it for one moment in your life. So to live in that reality and to make it a part of your day, and in all of our actions, they have consequences. They have real consequences. They mention that if you say these words like subhanallah, right, which means glory be to God, when I say that, it planted a tree in paradise. Like that made something real occur, right? When and related to what I was talking about with money, there's a beautiful narration where the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he had a sheep, that had been slaughtered, and they were giving away the meat. And he asked his wife, how much of it remains?
Mm-hmm.
How much is left? And she said, just the shoulder piece. We gave everything else away. And he said, rather, everything remains except the shoulder. Right? Because everything that was given for the sake of God, now that you've taken something, your wealth, you've done something for the sake of God, you've now made that action eternally valuable. Where a sin, right, that moment, you can erase that moment with forgiveness. So good deeds are far more powerful. Faith is the most powerful, and it's the key behind good actions, but good actions are very, very powerful. And bad actions you can remove with that faith and with those good deeds.
Yeah. So you brought up a good point, like about the checkbox. And I want to give people the benefit of the doubt, like the Christians and as an agnostic, I can judge everyone. So y'all, yeah, I can just say whatever I want. But so the Christians I've noticed that I feel are doing things out of humanity and the most pure parts of themselves are ones who don't feel like it's just, I'm just going to go to church and then that's going to be that.
Totally.
Like life of servitude type stuff of taking care of the community and coming up with food drives and not really even talking about it. Just you see their actions of working with the community and doing certain things. And some people you just talk to and they have this light about them. I don't know what it is, but some people you just talk to and you're like, whoa, that person was different. And it seems like people who are satisfied in the fact of knowing that they are striving to make civilization better for everyone, and I think what draws people away from Christianity are the people that's like, I'm going to wear the best clothes. I'm going to, pull into here with a Mercedes this Sunday. They just clock in on Sunday and clock out. I don't think that necessarily is going to build their resume for the greater goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's an issue of it that's love too. I mean, it's like, who's the one you love? The one you love is the one you could never do enough for.
Right.
Like if I go home and I tell my wife, all right, just so you know, I've officially done enough for you.
Yeah,
that's
I'm done.
Problem. That's man, that's a problem. Like you to say to, because you hear this is something too. Christians, if you're listening, I think we've already opened Pandora's box, so hopefully you guys don't get too mad.
It's very understandable. That's a problem. What Adam brought up.
Because there's a lot of talk about how you just need love. And, as long as you accept the Savior and you love him, then you can do whatever. And it's like, that confuses me, that mindset, because for me, it is, if you love somebody, you have no limit of tiring. You love what they love. You want to do what they do. And you want to do things the way they did them, honestly. It grows in you.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I want to take just to put something around that statement as well, is that saying that this is an observation of Christianity in America that I think the preachers and pastors are the first people observing and the first people addressing, saying, hey, it's not just a box that you check.
Yeah.
It's a continual relationship. It's a continual thing. So, I just want to make sure that it's understood. I'm not trying to oversimplify Christianity as a whole institution.
Oh, if they're here after 2 hours, 20 minutes, the critical thinkers are listening. Okay. The people still here understand what we're saying, but
it's been 2 hours, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Well,
we're having a great time.
We're having
great
host.
I mean, this is deep stuff. Like there's a lot of nuance to it that people. I think people are going to get a lot out of this, but yeah, I just I think having you all in here and When you sent me an email, I just instantly thought, I was like, what a good, captivating conversation that we can have. That I know when I post a photo, there's going to be a portion out there that's like, why is he doing that?
Yeah.
Why is he talking to, that's the conversations I want to have.
Yeah.
I want to have, I find something different in each show that I think is important, but I think this one is especially important to open up understanding because, man, people are just so agitated and aggravated, and life is way more than what religion you are, what language you speak, what color your skin is. It's just so much more nuanced than that. And I'll always believe there's way more good than bad in the world. So I appreciate y'all being here. Who would you like to, if someone hears, and they want to learn more, where can they go to learn?
Well, so we are, we don't have what do you call it? We're not a nonprofit or anything like that, but we're a group in pursuit of knowledge, in pursuit of knowing Allah. Allah's God. We didn't get into that.
No, we did.
We did.
Yep.
Okay. We're a group in pursuit of knowing Allah, gaining knowledge. We do classes in the classical Islamic style of important texts to our religion. And so we have a website. You can go on TijaniBlueRidge.net. That is TIJANI BlueRidge.net. And our group is Muslims of the Blue Ridge. We're in Charlottesville, Virginia. You want to come down, visit us? You want us to visit you? We'll see. Just shoot us. You can get us on Instagram, get us on all that. And that way, we teach about Islam. We do outreach events and whatnot. So please just look us up.
Good to know. Charlottesville, man. Was y'all there when all of that craziness went down?
Yeah, but that's a whole...
I wasn't.
I mean, it's a whole nother thing, but...
That's a whole other story we're not going to get into right now.
Very...
But yeah, we were there.
Very sad.
I was there, I mean.
Yeah. Someone got killed. Hopefully.
Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah, that was a whole...
That's a big memory in the town. But I've only been there for about a year.
Yeah.
We just recently...
and I hate that I...
Oh, that's the main thing that people know about it.
Yeah, I know, but
UVA, Thomas Jefferson, all that, yada yada. But they also know the lady. There were a woman, and she unfortunately was hit by a car during that event. Well, somebody hit her is a much more better way to say that. And yeah, it's an unfortunate thing. I was there for a lot of that, but
what's important to remember. But I hate when people associate stereotypes with. Yeah. I think that's kind of a stereotype of that's not Charlottesville. That was ugliness in Charlottesville.
It's true. So, yeah.
But yeah, I try not to do that. So I'm sorry. But yeah. So website, Adam, you're there teaching.
Same thing. Just on Instagram too. The Muslims of the Blue Ridge. You could look up. You'd find the account. Feel free to send messages. Yeah.
Good deal.
I mean, I love doing this kind of stuff. So I welcome any kind of questions or whatever.
Perfect. Your faith in one word. Let's end on that.
I mean, I think just the name that God named it. It's surrender. And the meaning that's tied in with that word, right? Islam is surrender. But there's this sense that the peace comes through surrender, right? Even if you just leave it at surrender, right? If you're at war, if you're battling something, you're struggling against something, and you surrender, now it's over. There's peace.
Yep. Oh man, maybe one day we can all get together and just say, you know what, everyone's right. Let's all just live.
Well, everybody'd have to be right.
I know. I know. That's the thing.
Well, everyone's right is everyone's wrong too.
Yeah.
Well, what we just said caused every war ever, which is the crazy thing.
Well, for me, it's like it's not even about everyone's right. It's about like what this is how I don't think that there needs to be this fear of people having beliefs where they do think that they are correct. I don't think that we should be afraid of that, because I think we can do these things under the understanding that you're not going to come club me over the head in like the Bucky's parking lot for it or something like that.
Sure,
and I won't do it to you. And then, and that's that.
That makes sense. And these beautiful prayer beads, I need to ask you about. Y'all have had throughout the show.
It's part of our practice. We do. We repeat. It's called vicar or remembrance. Yeah, that's the best. So, essentially, we'll have things like Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, or Ya Latif, calling out names of God is what that is. And typically, when your instruction, from a religious teacher or a sheikh, they have certain ones that they want you to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the sheikh sees things in the person, and they have a way that they do, and so they will tell you to do certain ones. And we do it as a group every single morning. And yeah, so it's essentially they're prayer beads. It's the best. We got
homemade.
No.
Oh no.
My wife made some for a while, but I think those are from Egypt.
These are from Egypt. These are not the ones we got. We were in Morocco recently.
Yeah,
but these are not. No.
How long was you there?
Morocco, just like barely 2 days, and then Senegal for 10 days. Was it?
Let me tell you, for a Nelson County boy, that was like the wildest experience of my entire life.
Dude, it's like, I'm sure it's like the polar opposite of like.
I just pick it up, even like, and it's funny, a lot of things people are traveling like, oh, I love food when I travel and this and that. I was like, I just want some food from back home.
Right. Yeah.
Although it was a great, thank God. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Now, do y'all do mission trips regularly or would you call it that?
So
trip.
we were, like it's interesting because a lot of times people are like, "Oh, you're religious and you're going to Africa, so you're doing a mission trip." No, our teachers are in Africa.
Oh, okay.
I'm going as a student. They're not benefiting from me. I'm benefiting from them.
Gotcha.
And that's pretty one directional there. But really, I mean, some Muslims do outreach trips internationally. It's very rare. I grew up in a Christian environment where like all the kids are going to mission trips. They're going to Rwanda and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really approach it. Certainly not at that scale.
And ultimately, if it comes down to talking about Islam or even providing services or doing anything like that, like where we're focused on is right here.
Got it.
This is our
absolutely.
This is our people. This is our place. We don't know anything different. That's my kind of take on it. Is like ultimately what I lack in cultural understanding and language and things like that in another country. Somebody from that country, they'd be much more suited to do that.
Exactly.
They can learn. They won't have to spend years learning it like I did. I'd rather go and do what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people here who need help with a lot of different things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard of the kind of circle of influence versus circle of concern. It's this idea that the smaller your circle of concern is, the wider your circle of influence.
Yeah.
And the wider your circle of concern, the smaller your circle of influence. If you're worried about everybody all over the world and what you can do to help them, you're probably not doing that much. Not that you shouldn't feel compassion, of course, to everybody who's struggling.
Spreading yourself too thin.
Right. Where if you're here and you're like, okay, I've got this friend and he's not doing very well. I need to help that guy out. Right. Okay. Well, now that guy's getting a little better. And hey, here's another friend.
Yeah.
Let me connect with him.
My next door neighbor is struggling. Let me go mow their grass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, we got hungry people in our own community. Let's get some food going. Let's get some meals going.
Yep. Well, I do love that, y'all. So nice meeting you. Yeah, we'll have to keep in touch.
Yeah, the pleasure's ours, man.
We'll come back and see you again.
We'll have to do it again. You know what we'll do? We'll get a round table going. Let's a round table. We'll get all kinds of religions in here. We'll all just sit down. I'll have a potluck. Come on, we can all sit down.
I'm down.
We'll come. Yeah.
I'm down.
That'd be fun. Well, cool. Well, thank you all. Be sure to check out the Muslims of the Blue Ridge.
Yeah.
They have a website. Google them. I cannot remember that
You'll just say Muslims of the Blue Ridge. That'll make it easy. Look us up
Google
on Instagram.
it. We'll find it. Yeah.
Everything. You can get us on Instagram. That's a good way to find us. And also, if you get us on Instagram, you can get to the website there. And we have stuff going on literally every day. So if you're ever in the Charlottesville area, just let us know.
Yeah, man. I'll link it in the description too. So people can just go and click on it. All right, y'all. Everyone out there, before you leave, be sure to like this video, subscribe to Creepalachia if you haven't. We are on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. And we do have merch now, creepalachia.shop. And do you have a religion you want to share on the show? We're going to be doing these regularly. I'm up for, just shoot me an email. We'll talk about it and figure out a way to get you in here. Creepalachia@gmail.com. And everyone else, please remember, above all else, long live Appalachia.